Hello, welcome to my September wrap video. I'm going to talk about the books I read this month, if I like them, if I did not like them, you know the drill. I managed to read 6 books this month. Now, I don't have a fixed reading number for each month. I try to read at least 2 books a month. Sometimes it can be higher or sometimes it can even be lower. Yeah, January was a bad month. I read like 1 book. I think my best run was in summer of 2016 or 15, where I read 20 books in 1.5 months. But to be fair, 14 of them were Pretty Little Liars series by Sarah Shepard, so you know. Okay, I wasted enough time with this intro. Without wasting any more time, let's get back to the wrap up. And I'll be using this handy little notebook, which is my media journal. I have no idea if you can see it. In here, I record the movies I watched, the shows I watched, and most importantly, the books I've read. So yeah, here's the TBR options that I'd given myself. So I like to give myself some space to read. I don't want to have a fixed number of books that I have to read this. If there's a pool of options, I can, just stop a book midway and move on to another. So this month I had Sometimes I Lie, Near of the Wind, Home Before Dark, Little Fires Everywhere, Gunslinger, which would have been a reread, Magpie Murders, The Testaments, and Death on the Nile. Gunslinger I skipped for obvious reasons because, why reread when I could read a new book? But I will be rereading Gunslinger and It because I've forgotten a lot of both of them. So, and I also skipped Magpie Murders. It's a book, it's a murder mystery, like Agatha Christie-esque book by Anthony Horowitz? Anthony Horowitz, yeah. And it just keeps skipping every month. So I have it on my Kindle, but it was on my August TBR, then it came to my September TBR, and now it's on my October TBR, so I don't know if I'm ever actually going to read it. There's no reason why I keep skipping it. It just keeps getting pushed. And I also have this little thing here, if you can see, where I track my reading. So this month I read one audiobook, and rest all of them were ebooks. I did not read a single paperback this month. I wouldn't do a review of these books because, of course, I have a lot of reviews planned. So it's just going to be a quick wrap up, basically, as the title says. Okay, so the first book that I listened to this month was The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. It was also my first ever audiobook, which was a very fun experience. I honestly did not expect to like the audiobook experience at all, and it was quite amazing. A lot of you might know The Testaments is a sequel, a much awaited sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, which was a dystopian fiction by Margaret Atwood about Gilead, which is authoritarian and fascist society where women are basically just baby making machines and household chore running, vacuum cleaners, dishwashers, etc., and so on. Of course, that book was a big hit because despite being dystopian fiction, it just is so relatable. Like, that is how so many people in the world see you, that is your worth as a woman. I can make an hour-long video about how much I love The Handmaid's Tale, but since it's not about that. Testaments rubbed a lot of people the very wrong way, and I think it's basically because it was nothing like The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale was a straight-up literary fiction dystopia, but The Testaments is actually a young adult dystopia. I mean, it is. Hear me out, it is. And I don't know if people would agree or not, but it is a straight up young adult dystopia. It has all the tropes associated with that particular genre. So if you do not like young adult dystopia, you will not like it. It has a heroine, it has an evil government, it has a child thrown into the mix to save the world, even though she doesn't want to save the world. It has all of the signature telltale signs of a young adult dystopia, and I think that is why a lot of people hated it. As a book, as a story, I loved it. I absolutely loved the writing. Aunt Lydia's chapter was so amazing, but I can see why people hated it. I really don't blame them. I was too forgiving to Margaret for just switching up genres like that, but not all readers can be forgiving. And some readers just have too high expectations. I personally do not like the readers who have these weird, higher than Mount Everest expectations of authors as if the authors owe them something. I mean, the readers are who made Margaret Atwood a celebrity. I get that. She owes to us in that sense. But she doesn't owe to us to write a story that would suit every reader's taste. It is her story, it is her baby. She has the full right to decide what genre she wants to tell the story in. In which genre she wants to tell the story. Okay, I ended a sentence with a preposition. Oh my god. Anyway, so yeah, I did not hate Margaret because of this book, and I did not hate this story at all. In fact, as I mentioned already, it was an audiobook, and I listened for 2.5 straight days. I just listened to the story. It was 16 hours or 17 hours long. It was so engrossing. There was a POV character that I hated. Not gonna spoil it, but there's Aunt Lydia's POV, and you just have to listen to the voice actor. It was Aunt Lydia. The voice actor was Aunt Lydia. I cannot imagine Aunt Lydia having any other voice. But yeah, I actually also DNF'd a book because the voice actors were horrible. I actually don't want to say which book it was, but it was a female voice artist, and she went so hard on mimicking. It was horrible. I read for like 20 minutes. I hated it. So I thought I'll just jump into a midsection, which you shouldn't do, in case of spoilers. But I did anyway, and then even in the midsection, it was equally horrible. So I just returned the book. So thank you, Audible, for allowing me to return a book, because I don't know what I would have done if I was stuck with it. The second book I read was Death on the Nile, because on my reading bucket list was to read a book that's being turned into a movie. And Death on the Nile fit that requirement. And I also have to read an Agatha Christie every, other month. Because come on, you have to. Death on the Nile started out very bad. I did not expect to like it. It's a bit spoilery, but till about 100 pages in, and I read the ebook format, so I don't know what page number it would be on the paperback. But in the ebook, till about 100 pages in, nothing happened. I mean, things happened, but the murder did not happen. And it was so infuriating that, okay, everybody is here, Poirot is here, the group is here, I know one of them is going to die because, it's an Agatha Christie book and they're all on the Nile and the title says Dead on the Nile. So why isn't anyone dying? That was a bit frustrating, but okay. Finally, someone died. And then Poirot did some detecting. And it was good detecting. And Death on the Nile happens to be the first ever Agatha Christie book in which I could guess the killer. I'm talking too fast, am I not? Yeah, I'm just so excited. This book was really good, okay? It was the first ever book where I could guess the killer. That is after guessing 3 wrong killers, obviously, because, you cannot guess the killer right away in an Agatha Christie. You just cannot. And if you claim that you can, you're lying. Okay, and the third book that I read this month was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste. I cannot pronounce her last name. Okay. Little Fires Everywhere is a contemporary fiction, but I don't exactly know what genre it would fall into. Anyway, that's a good thing, I guess, for those who don't like genres. The ending, okay, I was just checking my notes here. Yeah, I was most impressed by the ending. It was so phenomenal because it left so many loose ends. I know, people usually don't like loose ends, but it works in this book, okay? Trust me when I say that the loose ends work in this book. You're just left with so many possibilities, endless possibilities where this could go ahead. I can't really speak anymore without spoiling it. But yeah. Okay, one thing that I did not like about this book was I thought 2 characters were a bit stereotypical. But once I had finished reading it, I realized it might be done on purpose, that they were given very stereotypical cliches associated with those 2 particular characters. You find them in almost all chick lit, women centric books. And it angered me a bit. But towards the end, like the 30% of the book, you realize that they are stereotypical for a reason, because this story is actually deconstructing that stereotype of, a straight white suburban mom. Okay, I spoiled it. Okay, so the straight white suburban mom is a bit stereotypical, but towards the end, I realized, oh, it was done for a very specific reason. And then I ended up appreciating it even more. I would definitely recommend you to read this book because the way it deals with themes of race, of dreams, of womanhood, of everything. Like, the women characters in this book range from infuriating to goddesses. And all of them are so well written. The infuriating characters are written so that they just enrage you. The goddess characters are just so beautiful, you just want to be them. And they're all there for a very specific reason, okay? It's not like they're just put in there as stereotypes, like, in something like The Husband's Secret. God, I hate that book. Side note, I hate The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty. Oh, the next book. Sorry. It is Riley Sager's masterpiece, Home Before Dark. Okay, I know I say masterpiece because I'm excessively in love with this book, but I also hated some parts of it. And yes, it is possible to like and hate something at the same time. Okay, we need to stop putting everything in such binaries. Like, you can either, be one of the two. I hated some things, but overall, I just loved the book. I cannot get over how much I loved it. I do realize, and I've seen some reviews, that this book is similar to some other movie or some other book. Be that as it may, for me, it was the first of its kind. So I absolutely loved it. Home Before Dark is the story of a woman who lived in a haunted house when she was a child. Her father writes a book about the haunted house, which just follows her for the rest of her life. And then she goes back to the house to discover the secrets, if the house was ever haunted, if her father lied, if there is any supernatural element present there today. It sounds very cliched, another haunted house story. Oh yeah, that's what's missing from the horror market. But this book, oh my god, there's so many twists. And I realize that may be an annoyance to some people because there's just so many twists. I shouldn't talk about the twists because they would be spoilers. I realized third, second, this was my third Riley book. No, this was my second Riley book. And I realized that he absolutely loves to play with timelines, So all of his books have two timelines going simultaneously. It's Final Girls, Home Before Dark, The Last Time I Lied. I haven't read Lock Every Door, so I don't know what happens in that. But I will be reading Lock Every Door soon. Actually, Lock Every Door is another book that I DNF'd because I got an audiobook and I did not like the narrator. So, and Riley Sager, being a man, does not know how to write women. I can forgive him for that, but I cannot forgive him for that, if that makes any sense. There are some scenes in which I just cannot relate to the female character's so-called womanly decisions because they just don't make any sense to me. And I went online, I talked to a few other people, saw a few videos, and I realized, okay, it wasn't just me. Other people felt the same, that, okay, the women in his books aren't the most relatable. He tries to make them as non-stereotypical as possible, and in doing so, he makes them unrealistic. So the women are always complaining about the men because that's what women do, Women complain about men. That's our whole life. Even when we are trying to show that we are so different from other women, we are not like other girls and stuff, even then we are just talking about men because that's all we're capable of. Or we're talking about how much we hate other women. So, yeah, that's present in a lot of his books. Not in Final Girls. You should read Final Girls if you are a fan of the genre, like mystery, thriller, crime. And it does deconstruct some of those tropes that, women hating women and, other tropes in books like, I can't remember the books. Why can't I remember any books? Husband's Secret, or like something that Liv Constantine writes or Paula Hawkins writes, or some of those tropes are deconstructed in this. I have a video planned on Final Girls, so I'll talk about it there. But yeah, Home Before Dark was such a good read. The next book I read this month was Sometimes I Lie, domestic psychological crime thriller. You have an unreliable narrator. She is in a coma. Okay, and I also learned that this is an overdone trope. But for me, it was a first, so I absolutely loved the opening that, oh, this woman is in a coma and we're listening to her thoughts. She cannot move, she cannot speak, but she can hear everything. And that was a big surprise for me because I'd never read anything like that before. But I guess if you have read a lot of these books, you may not like it. I love the twists in this book. The writing in this book is like a river. It just flows. You don't have to stop anywhere you don't have to push yourself forward to read it, There are some books like that where you have to push. No, the words just flow so easily, they will carry you to the next page. And the biggest twist comes about 1/3 in the book. Yeah, the 1/3 into the book, you have your first twist. It's so mind-blowing that the first twist is just like, wait, I thought I was reading a completely different thing so far. And yeah, I liked it. But things I did not like about this book was the end. As I mentioned in Little Fires Everywhere, I loved the ambiguous ending because it leaves so many possibilities. With this one, I had to actually, I finished and I was so lost, like actually very lost. I had to go to Goodreads and, forums discussing this book, that what they thought of the ending. And then I found a few comments that I could relate to, that, oh yeah, that might be the case. Maybe that happened. But it's not very satisfying. If I have to rely on someone else's interpretation of the ending, I tend to not like those books. I want to have my own interpretations. But I could not with this book. So I was a bit disappointed by the ending, but I know some people just love the ending. And the last book that I read this month was the biggest disappointment of them all. It's called The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. It's a wish fulfillment fantasy of a middle-aged man. That's all I can say about it. I don't have anything positive to say about it. Okay, I have one positive to say. It has a good opening. It's written well. It's very poetically written. It's beautiful. But then it vanishes after the first 10 pages. So I actually thought that the first 15 pages are written by someone else, and then the rest of book is written by someone completely different, because they don't match. The writing of the first two chapters and the writing of the next, I don't know, 40 chapters just don't match. And it's a fairly heavy book. It was the longest book that I read in September. It's a fantasy novel, so obviously it's quite heavy, but I read ebook, so it wasn't heavy in that sense, but it was longer. This year so far, I hadn't read any trilogies, and I tried to read at least one trilogy or one duology. So I thought I'll pick this one. Name of the Wind is a part of the King Killer Chronicles, a set of 3 books. But sadly, I won't be reading the next 2, or gladly, I won't be reading the next 2, because the first one was so frustrating. I just don't have the patience to sit through 2 more books where I have to be inside Quoth, which is the main character, head again. I just cannot be inside his head again. And no, I wouldn't do that to myself. I know it sounds a bit unfair, but this book was bad, okay? It was so bad. Think of a fantasy novel. What do you think? Magic, dragons, kings, betrayal. And then think of a magic school. You will probably think of either Hogwarts or the magician, and you would be right to do so, because then you can just mix those two together and then you have the arcane university. Yeah, that's it. He just took Hogwarts and the magician and then just put them in a cauldron and brewed them into this university where you have a Snape, you have a Draco, you have a, what was his name, Peter Pettigrew. You have all of these people here. You even have you have a Gandalf Dumbledore hybrid. You have a teacher who, I mean, okay, this book was bad. Let's just end it at there. This was a testosterone fueled wish fulfillment fantasy. And again, I'm really sorry if I'm judging too harshly and you loved the book, but then you need to explain to me why you loved it. Because I don't see, there are no, fantasy is such a male dominated genre in general. And then you have a book coming out in this generation. Okay, if it was written in the 70s, I might have forgiven it. But even then, you have no reason. I mean, Lord of the Rings and Narnia came before that, and they still had important women characters. Narnia more than Lord of the Rings. But in this day and age, you're writing a fantasy novel which is just so testosterone fueled, where women are just non existent. There is one woman character which can actually be described as a good character. She's badass, she's whatever. But even she's not utilized. 2 women characters in this book exist solely to help the male have some motivations. And it's actually worse than fridging your women. You just kill the women to give the male character some motivation, which is a trope that I hate. Here they are alive, they're living, and they're worse than fridged women. How badly do you have to hate women to have them still be living in the text of your story, and they're still as useless as corpses? It's some distant motivation for the male character, but that's it. That's about it. Apart from that, you try to give them all the very superficially feminist looking motivations that, oh, this girl, she goes on many dates. Look how feminist she is. No, she's not. And also, it's not the next Lord of the Rings. It's not the next A Song of Ice and Fire. It's not the next Magician. It's not the next Harry Potter. Stop calling it that. So these are the 6 books that I read. Apart from these, I read 3 short stories. Pot of Tea by Agatha Christie, Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, and Heavenly Christmas Tree by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Dostoevsky's story was... I can cry just thinking about it. I genuinely can. If I had to rank my reads of September, so number 6 would definitely be Name of the Wind. Number 5, Sometimes I Lie. Number 4, Death on the Nile. Then I have 3 books left. I have Testaments, Home Before Dark, and Little Fires Everywhere. I'd put Testaments and Testaments and Little Fires Everywhere at a tie on number 2. And on number 1 would be Riley Sager's Home Before Dark, because I, again, never have read anything like that before and I absolutely loved it. Let me know down below if you agree with my ranking or if you disagree with it, or if you've read any of these books that I read in September, or you're planning to read them in the future. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, or thumbs down if you hated it. It's a democracy. At least so far.